Everyone loves a good conspiracy theory, but those theories are just limited to the real world. Thanks to some hard work by some of the internet's most renowned Redditors and theorists, we've come up with a list of wacky conspiracy theories found in our most favorite animated movies. So strap on your aluminum hats and prepare to be shocked. Before we count them down though, be sure to click on that subscribe button to get the latest and greatest from Screen Rant. Can you guess which animated film these emojis represent? Stay tuned to find out.
Try not to win, Bullseye! Yeah!
Jessie's owner is Andy's mother. Believe it or not, there's enough evidence available in the Toy Story films that back up the claim that Jessie's previous owner, Emily, was in fact Andy's mom. First up, Andy's hat. Despite Woody being his favorite toy at the start of the first film, his hat is remarkably not like Woody's. It's red with a piece of red lacing around the band and white roping around the brim. You know who also has a hat very similar to this? Jessie. The only visible difference between the two is the missing white lace on Andy's hat, of which we can clearly see the indentation where the white lacing should be placed. Seeing as the hat is pretty old, that lacing likely fell out over time. Consider this as well. In a flashback scene in Toy Story 2, we see a similar hat on Emily's bed in the 1960s, as evident by the groovy pictures on the wall. In the donation box where Jessie was left off, we didn't see the hat, implying that Emily held onto it. Considering the age gap and the fact that both Emily and Andy's mom have similar hair shades, it's quite possible that Emily kept the hat and passed it down to Andy, who grew up loving cowboys much like her. Tarzan is Elsa and Anna's brother. This rumor has actually been fueled on a Reddit AMA by none other than Chris Buck, the co-director of Frozen. So there may yet be some validity to it, but until it's confirmed, it's yet another wacky internet theory. We're all about wacky internet theories though, so we're giving it a go. At the start of Frozen, we see Elsa and Anna's parents leave via ship and ultimately perish in a storm. Elsa is then crowned queen. But what if the parents, King Agnar and Queen Iduna of Arendelle, survived the wreck and that the queen was actually pregnant? Bet you didn't see that one coming. Chris Buck would elaborate later on that in his own little version of events, the king and queen would eventually find themselves stranded on a tropical shore and would later take refuge on a treehouse in the jungle. Does that sound familiar? It should, as it's the setup for Tarzan, the other flick that Chris Buck directed. While this isn't Disney-approved canon yet, at least, it's still something Chris Buck believes happened in this version of events. Do you think the guy who worked on both films is entitled to bridge the two properties together, or is that decision ultimately in Disney's court?
And you forgot the carrots for Sven.
Elsa and Anna are related to Rapunzel. But the fun doesn't end there with Elsa and Anna's relations. We've all seen that Rapunzel and Flynn were invited to Elsa's coronation, as seen during the First Time in Forever song, confirming that these two franchises exist within the same universe. But what if there's more to their connection than merely sharing a cinematic universe? Thanks to the renowned scholars on Reddit, we have a theoretical connection that Anna and Elsa are in fact Rapunzel's cousin. Here's how. You know how we said that the king and queen of Arendelle were shipwrecked? While we don't know for sure if they survived, many believe that the monarchs were in fact on their way to Rapunzel's wedding. The theory goes on to point out that the king of Arendelle was aware of Rapunzel's magical powers and was able to brace himself for Elsa's. When brought to the trolls, they ask him if she has powers or a curse, as if this information has been asked before. Seeing as magic might be running in the family, the king shielded Elsa from her magic, knowing the hardships of his niece. Rapunzel also looks a fair bit like Anna, solidifying their possible relation. When Arendelle opened its gates again for the coronation, Flynn and Rapunzel are not only there for the ceremony, but for their aunt and uncle.
Push it! Push it! Where's your kid now, Sheriff?
Toy Story 3 is a metaphor for the Holocaust. Here's a dark one that's found popularity on the internet, but once you sit down and compare the plot points to history, it's hard to deny that there's some parallels to the Holocaust. Hear us out. Andy heads out to college and leaves his toys behind. This is the cinematic representation of the host nations that left the Jews behind as the Third Reich began taking over Europe. Then, in a scene that's eerily similar to Polanski's Oscar-winning film The Pianist, Woody holds a meeting in the attic where he goes over possible futures with the toys. Buzz suggests hiding out in the attic a la Anne Frank. But then things get worse and they're shipped off to Sunnyside Daycare, which may look like a not-so-bad alternative. But the center is in fact a concentration camp. Toys have it good at first, but it's not long before some toys go missing and are brought to the trash. Woody and the gang are trapped behind bars even, and eventually end up in an incinerator. But they are saved by the Allies, in this case the aliens, and brought back to safe territory and eventually start a new life away from their homeland. Wacky theory, but doesn't sound too wacky. Donald Duck has PTSD. A longtime Disney favorite and the only duck who can rock the no pants look like a boss, Donald Duck is known for his eccentric and wacky behavior. But what if there was a disturbing reason for that? Well, thanks to the internet, specifically the Journal of Cartoon Overanalyzations, yep, that's a thing, we have a credible theory for Donald Duck's unusual behavior. You see, Donald Duck has PTSD. Donald Duck is a pretty old animated character, much older than any other character on this list. He's so old, in fact, that he served as a paratrooper during the Second World War. But as we know, World War II was a pretty terrible moment in history, and cartoon characters are not exempt for witnessing the horror of war, especially as a paratrooper. Thanks to his service, Donald frequently suffers from flashbacks, demonstrates difficulty responding to social stimuli, and is constantly overstimulated, preventing him from sleeping well and resulting in aggressive mood swings. He also never talks about his time in the war. Despite being a longtime Disney character who's appeared in countless shorts, films, and shows, Donald refrains from referencing his time abroad in the 1940s. All sounds like symptoms of the war to us.
It's a surprise.
Ariel and Hercules are family. Aside from being Disney films, there's not much that links The Little Mermaid and Hercules. One is about a mermaid living under the sea who gets a 3-day pass as a human. Hercules, on the other hand, is about the son of Zeus and his conflict with Hades. But where's the connection between these two? The films are separated by almost a decade and share no similarities. Well, the connection isn't so much with the films themselves, rather with the characters. As previously mentioned, Hercules is the son of Zeus. Sitting on top of Mount Olympus, he's the most powerful of all the Olympians and the recognized leader. He also has some pretty powerful family members. One such family member is Poseidon, you know, the guy with the trident. Well, in The Little Mermaid, Ariel's father Triton is the son of none other than Poseidon himself, making Ariel and Hercules a distant relation to one another. They are first cousins once removed, while Hercules and King Triton are first cousins. While Disney has never commented on whether the two films exist in the same universe, we're inclined to believe so as we're dealing with deities here. Crossover time, anybody? Boo from Monsters, Inc. wasn't brave. How could we ever forget Boo? She was the child who ended up crossing over into the Monsters universe in Monsters, Inc. and befriended scare guru Sully. The two formed an unlikely bond and ended up being the heart and soul of the entire film. By the end, Boo was returned home and lived happily ever after. Or did she? Boo may have been a young child, but she exhibited a lot of signs of intelligence, perhaps even being able to register and memorize certain details. If that's so, then she definitely would have remembered that doors work like portals in the Monsters universe. The theory goes that Boo never forgot Sully and spent most of her life looking for him and the portals. She eventually does find a portal, but instead of leading her to the monster's world, it sends her back to the time of Brave, another Pixar film. She then gains knowledge of the Will-o'-the-Wisps and becomes the witch from Brave. There's even a carving of Sully in her hut, suggesting that she never forgot her old friend and carved out something to remember him by. Of course, we saw this as a cute little Easter egg, but the internet used this as hard evidence towards their conspiracy theory.
The finest merchandise this side of the River Jordan, on sale today. Come on down.
Aladdin takes place in the future. When you think of the movie Aladdin, the past is generally an image that comes to mind by default. The majestic palaces, the wardrobes, the fact that all the guards use swords, it's hard not to think of the past with images like this. But what if we were to tell you that despite all of those clues to the past, Aladdin likely takes place in a future where humanity has reverted back to an ancient civilization? It may sound nuts, but hear us out, please. When dressing Aladdin up for his big princely gig, Genie messes around with the wardrobe, commenting that the vest combo is much too 3rd century. But Genie previously mentioned that he was in the magic lantern for at least 10,000 years and would be in no position to comment on fashion trends of the 3rd century, implying that Aladdin takes place at least in the year 10,300. Well then, we have to wonder if this was a slip-up on the late great Robin Williams' part as he ad-libbed most of his lines, but if he meant to slip those years in, he definitely meant to imply that Aladdin's time frame isn't quite the tale of old that we were led to believe.
I was looking for, diversion! So long, sucker!
Bing Bong is from Monsters, Inc. Bing Bong's noble sacrifice in Pixar's hit film Inside Out sent us on a field trip we weren't ready to go on. He perished to ensure that Joy made her way back to Riley and restore her unbalanced emotional state. But what if Bing Bong didn't die, and that he may be from another Pixar universe? Bing Bong was Riley's imaginary friend when she was growing up, but there's a theory out there on the internet that had us interested. In Monsters, Inc., we saw that the monsters in that universe travel through door portals and into the bedrooms of children to collect screams. The theory goes that Riley actually saw Bing Bong once but wasn't particularly scared of him. In her sleepy state, she ended up committing Bing Bong, or something similar to Bing Bong, in her memory and ended up making an imaginary friend version of the real Bing Bong. That means that while the version of Bing Bong did sacrifice himself, he was only a memory manifested in Riley's mind. The real Bing Bong is likely chilling somewhere in Monsters, Inc., hopefully doing a better job at scaring people because dancing around wasn't going to pay the bills back then. Minions are Illuminati. The Minions are our favorite troublemakers. They love serving villains, ranging from Gru from Despicable Me to the likes of mummies, Dracula, and even dinosaurs. But what if the Minions actually worked with the most notorious group found amongst the conspiracy theory crowds? That's right, we're talking about the Illuminati. You know, the all-seeing eye on the back of the dollar bill, Dan Brown, Illuminati. Well, the internet thinks that they were in league with the Minions in the cinematic universe and helped orchestrate the moon landing. In the Minions spin-off film, Bob, Kevin, and Stu walk into a set apparently staging the moon landing. Don't forget that the Minions movie was a prequel and took place in 1968, 1 year prior to the moon landing. Looks like things were being prepared well in advance. Who best to stage such a moment, though? The Illuminati helped pull the strings with the Minions. Where does this one come from? Well, it's a little wacky. Clues ranging from Gru getting a loan from a bank, as banks are part of the system and evil, to Despicable Me showing the Eye of Horus, there are some telltale signs of a secret organization working behind the scenes here, or at least something along those lines. Well, that's it for now, everyone. Which theory blew your mind the most on our list, and which one seems the most unlikely? Do you think any hold any possible credibility, or are they all just internet crazy talk? Let us know in the comments below, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to us if you haven't already. That way you'll get the latest content from Screen Rant added to your playlist every day. Thanks a whole bunch for watching.